Welcome to Tell Me More, Coffee with Chris Yip, the official podcast of the Faculty of Applied Science and Engineering at the University of Toronto. Each month, I sit down with someone from our vibrant global community to talk about what places them at the heart of designing bold solutions for a better world. You'll meet alumni, students, and professors who are making a difference across a range of fields, including some where you may not expect to find them. My guest today is Arlyne James, who completed her undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering in 2024. During her undergrad, she launched My Dorm Store, which makes dorms into homes made by students for students. Arlyne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Chris.
Yeah, this is going to be super exciting. You're wearing swag. You're wearing a sweatshirt that I really want right now, which says My Dorm Store. So, we'll talk later about getting some swag from you. Before we get to My Dorm Store, why were you drawn to mechanical engineering in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. I think going through school, I loved STEM, like math and science, but I also loved creativity and art and history. So what really drew me to engineering specifically was the ability to weave those two together. So to not just focus on problem solving, but creative problem solving.
And art. So like a little bit of like a design aesthetic as well.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
But I have to ask this question too, with my decanal hat on and with my institutional hat on. U of T. Why?
Of course. So I think growing up, my mom had gone to U of T, and it was always a part of my life, like hearing about her.
Following the footsteps?
Exactly. She was a proud love. So she did nursing and graduated from St. Mike's. So growing up, she would always bring us to campus and had really wonderful stories of her time here. And she lived at Loretto. So
nice.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah. So it was always a big part of my life. And then when it came to applying for different engineering programs, I think having the track one specifically, that optionality and getting to learn more about what engineering really was before deciding which stream you wanted to do, that really appealed to me. And I think the mentality, so like the school mentality and that team feeling, it's funny, everyone always said, oh, U of T's so competitive, it's really hard to make friends, all that. And I found, I couldn't have been further from the truth. I found that especially when I came on the tour and for the like open house days, that camaraderie really shone through. Having that in a academic sense really appealed to me as well. And it being the best program in Canada didn't hurt. So.
You mentioned your mom went through nursing, right? So there's always this sort of nursing engineering connection. So was there any nursing engineering connection? Did she notice that when she went through undergrad?
She had lots of stories of
the
engineers back in the day, which I think the work hard, play hard, that was still definitely there when I did engineering. I mean, no one has more fun than engineers. So even having the second frosh week and in the winter term and all that, it's so...
Godiva week.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's just so much fun.
Yeah,
so.
It's great. And we just welcomed, we're recording this podcast about 2 weeks into the term. And we just welcomed our largest ever first-year class. Wow. 1,500 first years came in, 43% women, 63 countries. So it's an amazing cohort. And you started in track one. Track one, for those who don't know, you end up opting into one of our core programs once you finish track one. So that option's always there. And we're always interested in whether students end up in their chosen field, the one that they would have selected in first choice coming in, or something in track one actually swayed them in a different direction.
Yeah, so when I was initially in track one, I thought MechE. It's funny, people refer to it as track two sometimes because it still keeps a lot of doors open and allows different, you can focus on a lot of different streams, which is great. I think the other thing I really loved about MechE and something that drew me to that was the ability to still work like in project management or in a team, just working with people. I love doing that. So having that as such a core component of MechE, and that was what ultimately swayed me.
All right, now we dig into the meat of the topic today on the podcast. My Dorm Store. What was that moment that the idea came to mind?
Of course. So it was in my second year, and something that I also really loved about U of T when choosing engineering here was the ability to weave business in through your degree. So being able to do the business minor, I knew from day one I wanted to do that. So in my second year, when I was able to start taking engineering business courses, one of the projects was creating your own business. And I was thinking about different problems I'd seen or different things I wanted to solve. And I was fortunate to live at home in my first year. So I think seeing my friends living in dorms, and I had a friend that was an international student, and seeing her experience in such sharp contrast to what I was fortunate to have, like a pillow every night and clean laundry and just the comforts of home. And just, I think when you're sometimes in that environment, you don't realize sort of all the things you're missing and what a difference it makes. So yeah, when I was in my second year, after having seen so many of my friends go through that and not having those things in their dorm or not really knowing how to get set up and just how important that is, I wanted to solve that problem. So yeah, that's where the inspiration came from, and having that as a project in class really gave me the space to develop the idea, start understanding all the things that go into a business, thinking about how you would even start that, and looking at different customers, thinking about how you would forge partnerships. So I loved it, and then yeah, the class went well. And then at the conclusion of that, I had heard about the hatchery on a tour I'd been on. And the idea of starting a company was always really exciting to me, having that ability to just create something brand new and just be totally creative and throw a bunch of things at the wall and try out everything. And yeah, wear a bunch of hats. I just thought that sounded so exciting.
So did you do this as yourself as an individual, or was there actually a team of friends that came together on this?
Yeah, so a couple of my friends and I, we worked on it in the hatchery together, which was so cool to see that come together and really take what had been just a class project and make it into a little business. And then what was really interesting, so then in my PEY year, which is, for those who don't know, it's when you're doing engineering, you have the option to do a co-op year, which was another big draw for me to doing U of T, having that ability to test out like a real career for a year and see what you like. So I was applying to a bunch of different co-op positions and got a couple offers, but nothing was really sparking that same interest in me as running with the company and seeing what we could do with it. So I had reached out to the PEY office to see if doing an entrepreneurial co-op was even an option, and learned that it hadn't been done before. So it wasn't something that there was really a template for. And Roger Francis in the PEY office was gracious enough and believed in me and what I was working on. So it ended up being the first entrepreneurial PEY co-op, which was so much fun to build the template out for, sort of set up a system that other students now have continued on and been able to do. So working through all that with him for that year was really cool. And I think in that year, I saw that this was something I really wanted to take on full time and make into a company. And especially during that year, focusing on it and seeing what being an entrepreneur was like.
Yeah, so the startup space is interesting at U of T. It's very diversified. And the hatchery is kind of the engineering's one. It's primarily focused at undergraduates. Give us a sense of what it provided and the resources in the community build.
Yeah, of course. So I think like the hatchery or really any of the accelerators I've been a part of here on campus, they really give you the space to develop your idea, take the time to understand like what goes into making a business, sort of those fundamentals that you may not have had the background in before jumping into it. So yeah, I think they provided me with a lot of opportunities to connect with mentors like outside of the university too, which was great. And then I found that like U of T is so awesome with having those accelerators and that room for entrepreneurs. And then like at a central level, I think adopting like a change or like kind of a new system I found challenging. So that's why I started just reaching out to like individuals at the residences and forging those relationships. So, but yeah, the accelerators and the entrepreneurship community is awesome.
Maybe for listeners, sort of explain. So how does My Dorm Store work?
Yeah, so essentially we create packages that have everything students need to move into their dorm. So we partner with residences at universities and colleges across Canada to design these packages that have exactly what students need. So instead of wasting time trying to figure out what you need or arriving to an empty mattress, students arrive with everything they need already waiting for them, down to the correct like sheet size or if you need a shower curtain or a mattress protector, all those little things that you don't really realize you need until you're already there. So yeah, we take the worry out of moving, and then throughout the year, parents and loved ones can send care packages or for things for birthdays or exam time. So it really becomes like a connection between home and students, which is so special to see. It's just so heartwarming when you can help like a student celebrate their 18th birthday or their first birthday away from home. And yeah, so it's helping students move in and then feel like their dorm is their home throughout the year.
It's interesting because this is a huge transition, right? For a lot of people, it's the first time being away from home kind of on their own. Like that's an interesting process. Like you move to a new city, people have to figure out where stuff is, where to go, like what's nearby. And if you're in the middle trying to move, like it's just bad, right?
Yes.
And there's so much stress, for our students, they've got orientation week, they've got all that kind of stuff, figure where you live. This creates such a simpler transition.
Exactly. Every year I make it a priority to do pop-ups and really like be there to help students. It takes a lot of manpower for our team to do those events and like be on campus all around helping students move in, but it's such a priority for me because those moments when students are arriving and some of them are all alone, and they have like, there's one story from the first year that we did this, and we were at the residence and we were handing out pre-orders, and the welcome residence team had gone home, but we wanted to stay until every student that had pre-ordered could arrive and pick up their stuff. And while we were there waiting, a girl pulled up in a cab and got out with literally her backpack and her neck pillow. And since the residence team had gone, like the welcome team had left, she was like just so overwhelmed and like so lost and disorientated, and I don't think she'd even been to Canada before. So we were there to like help her get set up and find out where to go, and you really just become a part of the like residence staff almost on those pop-up days, just there to help students. So moments like that really reaffirm why we're doing this.
Yeah, I think that's so great. It is part of kind of like an unofficial welcome committee in a sense, right?
Absolutely.
I'm assuming your first client was effectively U of T. So I think when we talked before, you said, was it at Chestnut, right?
Yes.
The Chestnut residence was the first one you set up at, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from one residence at one institution, how is that scaled now? Because you did hint earlier in the conversation, sort of like it's across Canada now.
Of course. So in our first year, it was Chestnut and St. Mike's Loretto that we set up at. And
No linkage back with your mom and where she went.
Well, actually, a cool story from that was when I reached out it was just me calling like the residences, and when I phoned Loretto, I met this lovely lady, Alice, who was running the residence at that point. And when I was telling her about the idea and how much I loved like St. Mike's and Loretto specifically because I'd grown up going there, she was like, oh, well, why? And I was like, oh, well, my mom lived at Loretto, and she was like, oh, well, what year did you graduate? And we figured out that Alice, so she started working off as like a cleaning lady at the residence, and she knew my mom from when my mom had gone there. So
one degree of separation.
Yeah,
yes.
Such a full circle moment. So I was able to like go back with my mom, and she gave us like a little tour. It was so special. So and she was such a big supporter from like day one. So having like being at U of T, when you meet people like yourself who really like get to know you and believe in what you're doing, it makes such a difference. So so Chestnut and St. Mike's were the first, and University College were the first three residences that we got started off at, and then grew to more schools around Toronto. And then last year we were at schools around Ontario, and then this year we were at residences across Canada. So that jump was took a lot of just logistics planning and figuring out how we were going to pull that off this year, but it was super exciting. So I guess In total, we were at about 60 residences across Canada this year, and that comprises of university and college residences and then like off-campus residences as well.
Oh, so like people in private, like
Campus One.
Campus One. So,
yes.
but still, like officially, still residences, not sort of, or could someone actually go my dorm store, but they're actually, it's like an apartment that they rented or something like that. Can you still do that?
We actually saw, as I think a lot of the growth too has been through word of mouth and return customers. We've seen that as well. So when students are moving into apartments after their time in a dorm, they'll order, because now we do like kitchen and apartment essentials as well. So yeah, I think when students are moving into a space with like a kitchen, they have no idea what they need. And I don't blame them. And yeah, even universities that we hadn't had like an official partnership yet with, when we were getting orders from students there, yeah, it provided an opportunity to reach out to that university as well. So I think students telling each other about it or just finding us online provided a real way to grow across Canada.
I kind of floated the idea like this is actually an interesting opportunity for corporates who are looking to place someone, not just in a corporate apartment, because that would obviously be set up, right? But, research sabbatical visitors and things like that, where they're sort of in an apartment, but then is that a potential market?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think anyone that's moving into a new space and is just looking for those essentials that they need to get set up, it's the type of thing where, it's already tricky enough to travel, let alone packing all of that. So yeah, and if they're looking to set up a new space, it definitely applies.
Right. They sign for the pickup package, right? And then at the end of the academic year, what happens at that point? Yeah,
so I think since I started the company, so much time went into picking the products we were going to use and the suppliers we were going to work with. So I made sure to like test every item and really put a lot of time and care into the items that were going into our packages. So picking things that would last students like well beyond their first year. So we find that students will either keep their items for next year or for their second or third year. Or we have had students that reached out to us and said, like, hey, I don't need this stuff, or I'm going back home. So we've started at least in the Toronto area.
Storage.
We've done something like that, or a donation program. So we'll collect the items at the end of the year and then we'll donate them to, just to reduce waste and find a better way to repurpose them.
That's a cool sustainability angle to it, right? Because
absolutely.
I remember us talking about this before, and like everybody, we all accumulate stuff during the year, and it's sort of, what do you do with it? And it's like, well, now you could actually build a storage service where you could start going back and forth. Because I would assume you also have a storage issue for all your stuff that as you start to package it for deployment, right?
Yes.
So how do you talk about this logistics question? So how are you doing that across the country? I could imagine in Toronto, it's like, oh, I'm here, but as you spread, like, are you building like depot sites in different places, or do you have team members now going, or are you flying across the country trying to do pop-ups?
Yeah, no, it's this is where the engineering problem-solving mindset really comes in handy, and I'm just so happy I did this degree at U of T because it really prepared me for like big, overwhelming problems like that, where to take the next step, you really have to do a lot of like pre-planning and problem solving. And so I think we were fortunate to have a lot of lead time before we got any orders in. So we knew that it was going to be across Canada sort of in February of last year. So that provided like a good 4 or 5 months to build out that system. And I really tackled it like an engineer, just taking everything down to like the system level and plan Bs and what to do if this happens or that happens. So we ended up shipping everything out from Ontario and keeping everything in-house, which I wanted to do just for the quality control perspective and making sure that we were delivering the same level of service, even though it was going to be in like Alberta or Halifax or in BC. So we ended up not like doing the different centers. We kept everything in Ontario, and then shipping wise, it was just a lot of I spoke to so many people like in the distribution and logistics world to get a better understanding of what that would look like and how to accomplish. Because a big part of what we do too is offering the move-in day delivery. So having everything arrive on time, but also not arrive too early, because then the residences have all these packages, and these partnerships allow us to be like the only packages that arrive before students do. So getting that timing right is so important. And yeah, it was just a lot of learning, a lot of finding like the right shipping partners, and like finding a bigger warehouse space to build all the packages in.
Right.
And yeah, getting all those systems in place well ahead of time. So, I mean, demand this year was way more than we had or like could have anticipated. It was like, even though we had done all that, I was still like trying to get more inventory at the last minute because it was just way more than I had predicted. So being able to use that creative problem solving, and you can do all the planning in the world, but unforeseen things come up all the time. So a lot of learning as you go, but I think that's just comes with entrepreneurship.
How are you dealing with, like we said, 2 or 3 years into it now? Are you finding people are saying, oh, this is a wish list. I wish you could do this. Like you also went into sort of kitchens and stuff as you've expanded, right, beyond just kind of the standard dorm. How do you deal with sort of what people want and then deciding I should stock this? How fine-grained can you be?
Yeah, no, that's a cool question. So I think what really kind of informs how we curate the packages or put all that together is the residence partnerships, and having that sort of firsthand knowledge from them about what exactly students need to move in, and really building the packages from there. So when students arrive, like everything they need down to the right extension cord type, or down to so some residences will only allow certain like laundry detergents. So having all those details in place for students is so important. And what's still great about, and I still like keep this today, is also like building in those little touches. So we had like a mom reach out this year, and she was saying, oh, my daughter really loves this like one color of comforter, but we don't see it on your website. Is there anything you guys can do? And I always make it a priority to make those things happen, because I know how important it is to have those little details when you're like a million miles from home. And or even like the other day, it was a girl's birthday, and we do these like birthday cake packages for birthdays, and I called the mom and I was like, okay, like I just want to make sure everything's in place, whatever. And she was like, yeah, I mean, it's wonderful, but I would really love if you could get red velvet cake for my daughter. It's I know it's not on your site and whatever, and I was like, yeah, we'll make it happen. So I think still like going the extra mile to do those things is it's definitely reminds me of why I started this in the first place.
How big is your team now, right? Because when you describe sort of 60 different residences, I guess, and that, I don't know if that's 60 different institutions or some subset of that, but how big are you as an operation?
Yeah, so we ended up hiring 3 students this summer to work with us, and one of them was an engineer, actually. So growing the team, I think what was really important when I was looking at hiring and figuring out like who I wanted in certain roles. So we had like a marketing role, more of a logistics coordinator, and then like a website development role. And there was the opportunity to hire like people who had graduated, but I think I found that when I was a student, having those opportunities to
as a student,
yeah, exactly, it makes such a difference to have that first role and that first sort of thing on your resume, and all the learning that I did in those like early co-ops or early positions, and just having someone sort of take a chance on you, it made such a difference. So I think that was something I wanted to carry on. And I worked with 4 awesome students this summer, and it was really wonderful to see how they started off in May to where they are now. And I think and I learned so much from them too, about how to lead and how to sort of grow a team. And it was really cool to actually sort of expand just beyond myself.
So you've hit the residence, you're scaling across the country, so 60 residences. What's next? What's the grand plan for Arlyne to take over the world?
Yeah, I think, expanding to different markets, as you said, doing more business in Canada too. I think being a Canadian company is something that we love being, and we're helping more students here. I think also building out our offerings throughout the year. So we've seen how much of a difference these like care packages make. So being able to offer more of that. We also have like a new subscription care package program. So parents can send something every month. But yeah, I think it's also finding like more ways to reach students. So it's been like, it's funny, we don't really do that much marketing. Like we don't do any kind of paid online advertising or anything like that. So I think building out like those channels more, seeing what having like that could accomplish as well. It's funny, I find that also just like being on campus and like doing the pop-ups, you also learn just so much about like what students are looking for, what they want. So also continuing to do that. And yeah, I've been fortunate enough to meet so many people who really believed in what I was doing, and just provided a lot of like mentorship and support. I think, and so much learning is just sort of done through those conversations, even with yourself. So having that, like sort of just kind of built-in guidance was wonderful. Yeah, we've been able to like bootstrap as we go, which has been great. So having, or being able to do that has been really wonderful.
No, I think it's great. Even though you've got such great growth, you're still kind of kept it in a sense sort of small. Like you still kept that sort of personal touch. It's not become sort of some sort of giant Amazon level stuff, right? It's sort of, this is still Arlyne and her company. We're running these personalized approaches. We've got the ability for people to do a subscription system. Anybody can send a personalized package to somebody and say, hey, happy birthday type thing. And someone gets their red velvet cake, right? I think that's such a special opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. And for it to kind of grow out of engineering, I think is wonderful. It's kind of a nice model study because it's also in a different sector, right? Than compared to people like, oh, I built an AI startup, I built an app or something like that, which is great. There's lots of those as well. But you're in a sector which is pretty neat niche, right? One that can be, I think, and you are being super successful with it. So congrats on all of that.
Oh, no, thank you. I mean, there's like so many people along the way that you just think about like how fortunate you are to like meet people like yourself who like from the get-go are like, this is awesome, like keep it up. So, and when you're like a new business or like navigating it, having that when you're when it's just an idea or when it's like new, it just means so much. So like, thank you for
no problem.
always being a cheerleader. It's much appreciated.
No worries. No worries. But thanks, Arlyne. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for being on the podcast.
No, of course. Thank you, Chris. I mean, you're like one of my favorite people to have coffee with. So.
Terrific. Thanks again for listening to Tell Me More, Coffee with Chris Yip. If you want to catch up on past episodes and to make sure you don't miss the next one, please subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and more. Just look for Coffee with Chris Yip. You can also check out at U of T Engineering on Facebook, Instagram, X, and LinkedIn for more stories about how our community is building a better world. And finally, if you'd be inspired to join us, we'd love to welcome you. If you're thinking of taking a degree or working with us on our research projects, you can find us online at engineering.utoronto.ca, or you can visit our beautiful campus in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I hope I can join you for coffee soon.